It was the night before Christmas. Stephen looked out the window at the falling snow while his mother drove the car to their friend's mansion. He was nervous because of the unfamiliar surroundings and the absence of his toys, but his mother assured him that it would be fun. When they arrived, the house was already lit up with lights. Sounds of music and laughter from the guests could be heard from the windows. Stephen sighed and got out of the car, stamping his feet on the porch. "Come on, let's go, everyone's waiting." His mom encouraged him. They entered a large hall decorated with Christmas ornaments. The living room was filled with a festive atmosphere. Guests were drinking mulled wine and chatting. Children were playing in the corner. "Look, they hired a clown," his mom exclaimed happily. Stephen turned around and saw him. The clown was dressed in a bright ragged costume with suspenders. His white painted face was spreading into a smile, and a huge wig adorned his head. However, something in his gaze made Stephen feel uncomfortable. The clown began to perform for the children, doing tricks with handkerchiefs and balloons. Everyone was having fun, except for Stephen, who watched with concern. He didn't like the clown's prolonged smile and strange lifelessness in his eyes. Suddenly, the clown disappeared, evaporated right in the middle of the trick. The children looked around in confusion while their parents reassured them that he must have gone to change. Stephen, however, heard muffled laughter from behind the door. He approached and peered through the crack. A fog was swirling in the corridor, and in the fog, a blurry figure in a clown costume could barely be seen. Stephen recoiled and returned to the living room, seized with fear and curiosity. What was that? The evening continued with a change of entertainment. The clown would appear and disappear, answering Stephen's questions evasively. He tried to understand what was going on, but no one except Stephen noticed anything strange. Gradually, the festive mood was replaced by anxiety for Stephen. Closer to midnight, the adults put the children to sleep in separate rooms. Stephen found himself in a guest room with other kids. But he couldn't fall asleep, continuing to think about the mysterious clown and his transformations. Then Stephen decided to uncover the clown's secret. He waited until the other children fell asleep in their beds. Then he carefully got up and, illuminating the way with a flashlight, left the room. The corridor was dead silent. The barely audible creak of the floorboards echoed under his feet. Stephen trembled with fear but was determined. He began to search the rooms for clues. There was nothing in the living room except traces of merriment. The library was also in order. Finally, in the last room on the second floor, Stephen noticed a slightly open door in the wall cabinet. He dared to open it. The shelves were cluttered with all sorts of junk, books, boxes, frames. But between stacks of photographs, one snapshot caught his attention. It captured the very same clown during his performance. But there were peculiarities up close. His body and arms had vague outlines, as if they weren't there at all. The clown's skin seemed transparent, and blue shadows shone through the makeup. Stephen shuddered. He found something that confirmed his suspicions. With trembling hands, he pulled out a few more photos, and in all of them, the clown looked even more ghostly. Then a door slammed shut on the floor below. Stephen dropped the photos in surprise and rushed to hide, barely managing to close the cabinet. He peeked through the crack and saw the clown walking up the stairs. His body flowed up the steps like a wisp of smoke, and his hands clenched and unclenched with clawed fingers. The clown raised his head and stared straight at where Stephen was hiding. Stephen flinched and pressed against the wall, trying to breathe quietly. The clown slowly walked on. Stephen waited a little longer and slipped outside, not understanding whether the ghost had noticed him. His suspicions only intensified. But now the main thing was to get away as far as possible. The next morning, Stephen found old newspapers in the library with reports of incidents in the town. After flipping through them, Stephen came across a note that caught his interest: tragedy at the fair. Boy Jonathan disappeared without a trace after the performance of Clown Harold. The suspect in the artist's abduction was found dead, and the boy's body was never found. Some witnesses claimed to have seen Clown Harold running away from the scene. Stephen didn't need any more evidence. He understood who he was dealing with. And now he had to find out the whole truth about the tragedy of Clown Harold for his own safety. Stephen closed the newspaper, shaken by the story he had just read. Everything was coming together into a single picture. The clown's ghost was unjustly accused and thirsted for revenge. But if he was innocent, then the true killer was never found. Deciding to shed light on these events, Stephen found articles from several months before the tragedy. They mentioned a series of children's disappearances after performances by a circus clown. The police suspected the clown but found no evidence. However, after the boy's death at the fair, the townspeople revolted. Clown Harold was found dead, but the circumstances remained unclear. With each new detail, the picture of what was happening became scarier. He realized that the maniac was still at large. Meanwhile, strange events began to occur in the mansion. First, one of the boy's favorite toys disappeared. Then guests complained of rustling and creaking at night. Even the adults frowned and whispered. A storm began. Stephen was sitting in the library when he heard crying from the next room. He cautiously looked inside and saw the clown leaning over playing cards. He examined them so intently, as if they could answer his questions. "What are you looking for?" Stephen asked. The clown slowly turned his head. His white makeup was smeared with blue shadows, and his eyes burned brighter than lightning. "Revenge, I'll avenge my fate," he hissed. "But the true killer is still out there. Let me help you find the truth." Stephen objected. The clown pondered. His silhouette twitched in the lightning outside. "Okay," he whispered finally. The storm intensified. Stephen realized that he needed to uncover the secret urgently before it was too late. Stephen had a dream that he was wandering through a deserted forest. The trees were shrouded in an immovable veil of fog. Suddenly, he heard a groan and saw a man lying on the ground. When Stephen approached, he recognized Harold the Clown with horror. His costume was torn and soiled with dirt, and his face was distorted with pain. "Help me, he killed me," the ghost whispered. Then the dream was interrupted. Stephen woke up in a cold sweat, trembling. He realized that the dream was a sign and he needed to talk to the clown immediately. The mansion was empty after the party. Stephen searched all the rooms until he found the ghost in a locked living room. The clown was sitting in the corner. Hugging his knees. "I saw you in my dream. Tell me what really happened," Stephen said. The clown looked up at him and told his story. "I used to perform in the circus. But then children started disappearing. I suspected one of the spectators, but no one believed me. One day after the show, I was lured into the woods and beaten. When I woke up, I saw what I had done. They decided that I had kidnapped the boy. And the real killer disappeared, falsifying the evidence. I died of my wounds, but my spirit did not find peace. I saw that face in my dreams," Stephen said. "Let's remember all the suspicious people from the past and try to find the evidence." Together they went through the names from the newspaper articles. And one person, Gardner Burton, caught their attention. "He was always strange," the clown said thoughtfully. "Maybe we should check him out." Stephen agreed to try to uncover the truth before another crime occurred. At night, Stephen and the clown's ghost sneaked into the gardener's shed. Everything was quiet, only the hoarse cries of owls could be heard from outside. The clown headed for the drawers with old inventory, while Stephen began to search through the documents. Soon he came across a notebook with strange entries. June 5th. Another trinket disappeared. We need to be more careful. July 25th. The boy Johnny saw too much. We had to take care of him. Stephen almost screamed in horror. Here was a confession to everything. He called the clown, who looked over his shoulder and froze. "The main villain has been found," he hissed. Suddenly the door slammed shut. Stephen turned around and saw the gardener Burton standing in the doorway with pitchforks. He was clearly drunk. "What's going on here? What are these children doing here?" the maniac barked. Burton lunged at Stephen. The clown tried to intercept, but his hands passed right through. The killer pushed Stephen, and he fell. Burton attacked the clown with pitchforks, but his blows only passed through the ghost. Stephen realized that he needed to do something urgently. He saw a kerosene lamp and knocked it over. Gas spilled on the floor. He took out a lighter and threw it into the puddle. Flames flared up. Stephen rushed out of the shed. Burton screamed wildly, his clothes caught fire. He wanted to run, but he couldn't. Stephen found the clown. He was stunned. "Thank you," the ghost whispered. "You uncovered the truth. What will happen to you now?" Stephen asked. The clown smiled. His body began to glow and dissolve in the light. "I have found peace. Goodbye, Stephen." With these words, the ghost disappeared. Stephen exhaled, his adventure was over. The boy did a good deed, freeing the clown's spirit from the curse. Everyone returned home for Christmas. Stephen told his parents everything, but they just smiled, not believing that it could be true.